Thanks for your question, member. In terms of the rationale, it predated us. However, notwithstanding, I can only assume that the JDF soldiers, regardless of the rank, they are out in the field. They interact with persons. They control our borders, etc. And, you know, the usual thing with things coming in, they are susceptible. So I think that, I suppose that's the argument, but I am not certain. Yes.
But I think it's a good point Member Robbins is raising, because to the best of your knowledge, these 5,000, 7,000, are you able to examine them?
That is where we want to get to know, which is one of the reasons why we have made the proposal to shrink the list so that we can be more targeted. We're not saying that these are persons that would have found themselves in these type of situations, but if we are able to do a proper analysis of the information we receive, and that's why the Gazette is such a powerful tool. We could say, for instance, let them file the first year or so, we watch, and basically based on the trend, we can determine that, well, next year we will take them off the Gazette, or take a group of persons off the Gazette. But we have to be able to manage what we have before us. But I must hasten to say, the JDF total, which is the total amount of persons, is 7,102, but the officers are only 500 in number. So it may be the case that we can graduate based on what we see happening when we start to do the deeper examination.
Right. I think you have a major problem, a challenge, because over the years, certainly, you're getting these huge numbers of declarations, which is, for one reason or another, is just taking up storage space because they're not being examined. They're wasting a lot of your clerical staff time just to check. And it seemed to me that the Integrity Commission should come to a decision very quickly as to, you know, the category, to reduce this list to a manageable amount that you can use as your sample to deter and eliminate corruption. But at the moment, I suspect just having it 40,000, maybe 50,000 when you include the JCF and the JDF, I think you're really wasting a lot of administrative time. Would you say that, Member Robinson?
Well, that's why I raised the issue of JDF, and I raised it for two reasons. The JDF internal mechanisms for determining those persons who are corrupt tends to be much stronger than and more robust than the JCF. And, you know, if you say 500 are officers, I don't know what rank you would want to start at, but I certainly don't think it is necessary for every member of the JDF to declare. I accept the thing about borders and protection of borders, and we know what comes into borders, but I think those are more captured by the internal anti-corruption mechanisms within the force to deal with those kinds of individuals rather than this declaration, which most of which you simply can't even look at them because you don't have the personnel to do it. So I think this is one that I think requires an examination to determine whether we just continue doing what we have been doing in the past.
Mm-hmm. And I think, if I might say this, Mr. Beresford, to the commissioners, I think you should, almost before the end of the year, make some decisions to avoid, you know, asking another 50,000 more declarations for next year. You over the last 4 or 5 years, may have over 300,000. Isn't that about that? About 300,000 declarations sitting down, taking up storage space. The likelihood of you examining 2,000 of them is almost zero because you have only examined just over 1,000, as I understand it.
Yes, but we're getting better membership.
Right. So
Chairman.
maybe you could use that as your research area. to determine which ones you should ask. But I would like to think, Mr. Beresford, and you can convey that to the IC commissioners, you make a quick decision. We are going with the 12 million, which is sown, but I think, as Member Robbins is saying, we need to look at the JDF. Do you really need 7,000 to take up additional storage space? Do you need, I mean, I suspect you may well want the JCF, yes, fine, no problem, because they're in constant interaction with the public. But I would think that you people need to streamline this thing if we're going to do spear fishing of corruption in the country. Okay, sir, so continue, please.
Thank you so very much, Chairman Chuck, member, for those comments. So with respect to the categories of persons, the question was asked if the threshold was moved to 12 million, what those categories would look like. We sought to summarize the categories that are in the income group of in excess of 12 million, and that's the cabinet secretary, permanent secretaries, heads of entities, senior executives, senior consultants, directors, heads of division, senior managers, senior medical officers, as well as senior technical officers. Now, with respect to what those, an illustration of what those categories would look like, we made some totals, and if we were looking at, for example, the total grouping that we have now, and that would include everyone, we would have approximately 44,000 persons. If we looked at gazetted positions only, and we also took the JCF, all of the JCF and the JDF, that would be approximately, well, just over 25,400. If we looked at, if we moved the threshold up to greater than 7 million, and we also included the gazetted positions, that would be persons, so gazetted positions and the JCF and the JDF, that would be 29,230. And if we looked at gazetted positions as well as persons with income over 12 million, we would get the numbers down to 26,312. And of course, as you recommended, Chairman Chuck, we could also look at those persons that we have in fact gazetted now.
Okay.
So take a look again at other groupings. The question...
Chairman, I'd just like to add that by changing the threshold, we have practically cut it by a half, there about 50%, which is very good. And we have not looked back at the other recommendation you just gave with respect to the armed forces, in particular the JDF. So that is something we will put to the commissioners, and we could definitely consider. Because once we utilize the Gazette, it means we have full control, because on an annual basis we publish the Gazette.
Sure.
So for some years we may say, you don't need to file this year. So we have that control,
Wonderful.
and we are able to manage it better.
Yes.
So that's one of the reasons why this is before us now, before you know, Chairman and Member Robinson.
Right.
Thanks.
We're also asked to look at what is the approach taken in other jurisdictions, particularly within the Commonwealth, United Kingdom, Australia, parts of Africa, in dealing with the increase in emoluments threshold. What are best practices in relation to what obtains regarding these increases in emoluments threshold? The regime in Australia and United Kingdom does not require public officials to declare assets and income. In these jurisdictions, public officials are expected to embrace certain ethical guidelines to promote integrity in public life. Public officials are encouraged to disclose interests and safeguard against conflict of interest situations. In the foregoing regard, the referenced jurisdictions could not be used to present illustrations dealing with threshold increases. With respect to other jurisdictions we've reviewed, we completed a table showing the basis which public officials were required to disclose assets. And in most of the jurisdictions, St. Kitts and Nevis, Turks and Caicos, Grenada, Guyana, the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Croatia, Jordan, Argentina, Hong Kong, those jurisdictions looked at positions rather than using a threshold.
Right. So what you're saying is that all of these jurisdictions, go ahead first. Sam.
I'm particularly interested in Trinidad, and if you could provide for us at the next meeting the positions in Trinidad that they, if you have it here, you could probably share it. But just in looking within the Caribbean, Guyana may evolve, and I suspect they will evolve with the discovery of oil, and their systems may need to strengthen. But I'd love to hear what Trinidad in particular does and the particular positions they have also as an oil-rich country.
Okay, so
if I may, Chair, and that's very interesting because only about 2 to 4 days ago, there was an article where the chair of the commission is making the recommendation that all public officials should be filing.
This is in Guyana?
In Trinidad and Tobago.
Oh, in Trinidad?
Yes. Only recently, yes. As a matter of fact, I'll just look for the article for you.
right. So with respect to Trinidad, the members of the Houses of Parliament, ministers of government, parliament secretaries, ministers of the Tobago House of Assemblies, members of municipalities, the local government authorities, senators, judges, magistrates appointed by the Judicial and Legal Services Commission, members of boards of all statutory bodies, state enterprises, permanent secretaries, chief technical officers.
That's an interesting one, which I'm not suggesting we got here with members of boards, because if you got here, you'd probably get nobody to serve.
Not only that, the numbers would be exorbitant.
I know, but it may be something of consideration for particular types of boards that meet a particular threshold, maybe at the income level or the strategic level. But continue. It's interesting that they're the board members.
Right.
Yeah.
So in summary, those are the positions from Trinidad and Tobago.
Based on that, did they indicate how many officials would be required if you took that number together?
No.
For Trinidad, you don't know what that number is?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay, all right.
And sorry, Chair, member, I found the article. It's a Newsday article, Sunday, the 8th of December. And I quoted the chairman as saying that...
This is in Trinidad, yes?
Trinidad.
Mm-hmm.
In the report, and they referred to the report that the chairman sent to Parliament, the Commission urged an expansion of its remit to include all judges, magistrates, teachers, police officers, diplomats, and public servants. Yes. Yes.
Right.
When you finish, I have a suggestion to make. Go ahead.
Okay. So Guatemala, United States, and Jamaica were the countries that we found that used a monetary threshold. United States used a monetary threshold, but this was pegged to income level. So they, for instance, referenced, say, income level 7 in a particular scale that was prescribed, persons within that income band. So whenever that income band increased, naturally those persons would still be included, so there would be no reason for them to move the income threshold as income changed.
Mm-hmm.
Guatemala used a similar system to us, but they just indicated persons earning over 1,000 US, and that was it. But and they qualified and do not handle public funds.
Right.
Right. So Jamaica is very unique with respect to the use of the threshold modality. Go ahead, member.
So, in summary, your recommendation would be the 12 million and above for us in the first instance, but a migration to a position or function-based system. And what period of time would you be recommending for that kind of migration?
I would recommend 3 years. And let me tell you why. We are going to be spending the time to refine the Gazette as it is now. So we need to get a better appreciation of the trends based on those persons who file within the Gazette. And it will be very easy to remove the categories over 12 million since we have identified them now and just put them on the Gazette. So it can be the case that we do it more speedily, but I would want it over the passage of time for now. So we observe and see how it progresses.
Are you finished? You're not finished, is it?
I'm not quite, Chairman Chuck. Okay, so the World Bank publication on income and asset disclosure, which we used, outlined the United States model, as I indicated that the income level was pegged to, the threshold was pegged to an income level, and also the Guatemala scenario. According to, just in closing, according to Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development report, countries differ widely as to what categories of public officials are covered within the declaration system, what categories of public sector employees are considered public officials, and whether any individuals other than public officials should be covered. Ideally, asset obligations must come with positions and functions with an inherent risk. Implementing agencies are therefore challenged to consistently reevaluate their respective jurisdictional peculiarities to determine the best approach to asset obligation.
Chairman, if I may just close out, 2 other countries in Africa, Kenya and Nigeria. Kenya requires all public officials to file, but they only file every 2 years. And in Nigeria, all public officials again, but every 4 years. So it's quite unique in the other jurisdictions, and they have their own set of challenges that you may have to use to evaluate the effectiveness of what is happening. Yes.
I know we can't make any decisions here, but Member Robinson, just help me with what I considered. First of all, I think these annual declarations is not only burdensome, but has turned out to be, nugatory. They don't really help. So that the experience as I see it from the information you have brought to us, you have over 200,000 declarations just taking up space. Wouldn't it be a good idea if, in fact, in certain categories, you follow some of the other jurisdictions and say maybe police officers file every 2 years, or you stagger it, some file every year or every 2 or 3 years. And I would say the same with other areas. So at least you have a reasonable number that you can examine. Now, I'm not going to, parliamentarians, politicians, because of the image, they file every year, and it's not a lot, okay? But I would say there are certain public sector workers, the police, I imagine doctors and nurses. Why would you want them to file every year? You get me? I just feel that, in fact, I would go so far to say you could stagger it in such a way that you get a better opportunity to examine them rather than just filing every year and you will never examine them. Sorry, go.
I would say, I would hazard a guess that doctors in particular, less so nurses, are more of interest to TAJ than to you, if you understand what I mean. Right? I think that is more where the interest is, in terms, not so much what they do in the public service, but what they do otherwise. Right? And it is less, in my view, about anti-corruption and more about ensuring that
Quite.
incomes are declared for tax purposes.
So I would certainly urge you to ask the commissioners to look at this recommendation that instead of annual returns, you say one category, file every 3 years or every 2 years, another category every 3 years, so that you don't have more than 5,000 most declaration coming to you. In fact, I would go even further, you know, and look at the possibility that you file every 5 years. For example, I'm not talking about public sector workers, not politicians and other sensitive posts. But you also make it possible that based on allegation of persons appearing to live beyond their means, you are empowered to ask that individual, be it a police officer, a doctor, a judge, well, politicians will file, but to file for the year 2026, you know, something like this. So in other words, it seemed to me that, and I've been filing now for the last 20 odd years. The only good thing about it is that it forces me to put my house in order. But I know it is a burden on a lot of public sector workers who have to get audited reports, say, of their companies. I mean, I had to do it and I don't mind doing it. But there are many public sector workers who are forced to spend significant sums of money to get audited statements when it may look good and it may encourage them to put their house in order. But they do complain. To do this annually on a salary which is fixed is in fact a burden. So I really think that in terms of declaration, you know, you people should have a look carefully whether this is the best way to fight corruption. My view is that a better way is to use the access to information, not the access, the protective disclosure, and encourage persons to disclose what is happening amongst their fellow colleagues, privately, confidentially, and you are empowered to demand a declaration for us. It may be, let us say you decide for a category of public sector workers, you don't have to file every 5 years. But you have reason to believe that this person is living beyond their means because of, you know, complaints or disclosure. Then you're empowered to say to that person, notwithstanding you're to file in 2027, we're instructing you to file for 25 and 26, something like this. You know, so that you're still empowered to demand a declaration, a statutory declaration, but you have it every 5 years. But based on disclosure to you, you can still say to the public sector workers, notwithstanding you're to file in 2027, we're instructing you to file for 25 and 26. And you don't have to give any reason. In other words, and that would avoid this annual declaration. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Chair. And those are recommendations that I'll take back to the committee. But I just want to clarify a few things as it concerns the information that we now have in-house. You say that it's just a lot and we have them there, but it is not really so in all cases, because in many instances when we get reports, protected disclosure or complaints, we're able to pull back information on those particular declarants that have already filed,
Right.
and we're able to do a deeper dive. So that's one. Secondly, as it concerns the financials, the persons who have business, and I'm not sure of the criteria, so I don't want to misinform the committee, but they are required by the company's office to prepare their financials.
Yes.
So what we ask for, in the event that you're not required by law to prepare your financial statements, all you need to do is give us a breakdown of your assets and liabilities. So, that onerous cost would be on persons with, say, for instance, small businesses. It's persons with larger businesses that would have that requirement to do so. And it all depends on the amount. I think there is an amount also that you have to reach for you to be required to do so. And we ensure that our systems are, congruent with that.
No,
All right?
no problem.
As it concerns the issue of the staggering of filing, it's a conversation that started almost 3 years ago at the commission level. And, it has evolved to the extent that we made this proposal now. And that is why we said, in the first instance, let's go with 12, which would take us down almost 18,000. So almost 18,000 public officials would not be required now, but we would still not necessarily compromise the process because we have captured all the risky positions. And with the Gazette, exactly what you're saying, we can do, because we can place a group on the Gazette this year, and then we don't do it back until next 2 years. So we are in full control, but we have to be informed on the data that we have before us to understand the groups that can enjoy that.
Right. So my feel is that, if you're going to do spear fishing, then you have to do more targeting. But at the moment, you're doing net fishing, which you're lucky if you do catch, anything.
I'll disagree with that one.
Sorry?
I'll disagree with that one.
Right. Well,
because we understand what we are seeing and we know what we have.
Well,
we have always selected those high-risk groups. And from the high-risk groups, we have been identifying things.
Well, with due respect,
Yes.
Mr. Beresford, people have been filing, and apart from failure to file or failure to respond, I have not seen where these statutory declarations have exposed this wide group of persons to charges of corruption. So what I'm really saying is that filing declarations has not really assisted the process of deterring or eliminating corruption. Because to the best of my knowledge, what I've seen from all your annual reports are basically persons who fail to file, so that you take them to court, or they did not respond to you because you asked for certain information and you take them to court. But I have not seen, it may be, and I must be careful when I say this. No, but what I mean is that...
Because it may be a premature assumption based on what may come.
Well, this is it, but all right. Having said that, because, it is in the public that there are about 20 odd plus 6 parliamentarians who I suspect that there's a mismatch between purchases, expenses, and income. Now, I must tell you the frank truth. We have 2 reports, recent reports, which came to the House, which we're not discussing. But to the best of my knowledge, you did them without any indication that there was any investigation going on. Both reports, one was presented Tuesday and a couple of weeks ago. They came in and they were reports. I read every phrase of those two reports. The investigation was extensive, and you did your report. I think that what was revealed about 6 parliamentarians and 20-odd public officials, I think if the IC should basically just pursue the investigation and come with a report on all of them if necessary, rather than leave it out there that there are 6 parliamentarians, 20-odd persons. Sorry?
I'm saying, why are you assuming that they're not doing their investigation?
Well,
they probably are quietly doing the thing until they're ready to...
The concern I have is, rather than saying it, just do the investigation like in the 2 reports and report eventually.
Remember, the context of that information came from their annual report, and they have an obligation to indicate to the country, based on the $1.2 billion they get every year, what they're doing. So the information came from the annual report. As all of us know, they can't comment on anything until they are complete. So yes, it does provide opportunity for speculation, and there's a lot of speculation.
Which is unfortunate.
Which
and
is, but I assume they are pressing on with their work, and when they're ready, they will submit it to the parliament.
Well, to be frank with you, apart from the IC and anyone else who have information, certainly I have no idea. And every one of my colleagues I've checked with, nobody has any idea who they are. Maybe wrongdoers basically deny it. No, don't. I accept that. But the sooner the IC can indicate that they've completed their investigation and these persons will be charged or will be reported to Parliament. In fact, the sooner you can report to Parliament, the better. Now, if those persons fail to respond to you, then bring them in as you summon them. But to leave the speculation out there is not good for us in the House, because everybody is looking at one another to ask, who is it? Fine? No. Anyway, having said that,
thank you very much, Chairman. I understand. But the annual report only reflects the work that we do. I mean, in terms of speculation, we're not in that business. We're just reporting to Parliament that this is what you have spent, and at each stage, this is what has been done. So it's really just a reflection of the work that we're doing.
Right. Let me be very frank. Speaking for myself, and I know many of my colleagues, certainly, when Minister Clark say whatever the IC want, they will be provided. And I don't think there's anything the IC has asked for which they haven't got. Am I lying? To the best of my knowledge, you get all the funds that you have asked for. Sorry.
In terms of budgetary support, I did say the last time.
That you get what you asked for?
Yes. Budgetary support.
No. And why I say that, you see, we want the Commission to succeed, because corruption across any sector of the society is debilitating and, in fact, really can never be supported. So that we want it to succeed. The only question is, what is the best way to succeed? And that is why I'm saying we need to find some better ways of spear fishing. And that can only come with inviting more use of the protective disclosure, which I know your executive director, when I gave him the authority, I said, utilize it more, advertise more. Let it be known that we can only eliminate corruption if it is disclosed by those who know that it is happening. And people know within their departments or within the society the likelihood of persons being engaged in corruption. I mean, a lot of it is speculation, no doubt. But once they can disclose to you then you have a better opportunity to investigate. And I mean, the truth of the matter is that when people complain to you, you're in a better position to conduct the investigation and complete it. So, I beg you, from what we have said this morning, no decision, but we urge the IC to look at some of these recommendations, especially in terms of staggering the statutory declarations. I think there was an agreement the last time you were going to do the 12 million. Right. So that, but I would urge that you implement some of the discussion for next year. So you have less and less matters to deal with and less burden on your administrative staff to go and file thousands, tens of thousands of declaration. I would really hope you can find a way to reduce it to under 10,000 so you can do a bit more, net fishing. Okay, so thanks.
Thank you very much, Chair, for that. And that's why we're here. The first cut is to increase the threshold. As I said, about 18,000, it will be reduced by that amount. And then we internally will look at our gazette and see how best we can make some adjustments. And as I said, the conversation started some time ago. So we would just continue that process.
And to be frank with you, if you have made any internal decision and you want to come back and report it back to the Oversight Committee in terms of the discussion we have had this morning, I think we would be very happy to hear from you. In other words, suppose you wanted a confirmation from Parliament that you're not going to do an annual, you're going to stagger. Then I think it would be useful for you to so indicate to the Parliament so we can have another Oversight Committee and you can indicate the basis on which you're going to stagger for this set or another set of public sector workers. Okay? So thank you very much. And what we're going to do is to take the minutes and then next meeting we just adopt it. Okay? So unless there's anything further, thanks again. Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairman and Member Robinson. Have a good day.
Right. So, all right. Well, we have to find out. We have to find out when the chairman is going to be here. No, there's none next week. No. All right. Thanks, Julian.
All right.
Here's how we sign the alphabet.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Now I know my ABCs. Next time, won't you sign with me?
Take your safety seriously. Always wear your seatbelt. A message from the Road Safety Unit in the Ministry of Transport and Mining.
George William Gordon, now Right Excellent George William Gordon, national hero, was born in 1815, the son of a Scottish father and an enslaved Jamaican mother. He got a call to make the world a better place, and for that he was never forgiven. You should know then that conditions in Jamaica then were just unbelievable. People were suffering. 311,000 persons in 1838 enslaved, received their freedom, and were just thrown outside. And what George William Gordon did, he bought lands and he cut up the lands and allowed the poor, the dispossessed, to have access to the land. And his colleagues did not like that. He chastised the governor in meetings right at the space that the governor needed to do more for the people. And the governor didn't like it, called him a mischief maker. And this is the space where George William Gordon came to, as it were, give up himself because he heard they were looking for him. And from here, he was taken to St. Thomas, where he was tried and hanged on the 23rd of October, 1865. And he reached the Friday, and they hanged him the Monday morning. But before he was hanged, he asked for permission to write a letter to his dear wife, Lucy. He had married this lady, Shannon, Lucy Shannon. He married her, and he asked that he could write a letter, and they allowed him to write the letter. That would have been Sunday night, early Monday morning. He wrote the letter to say that he was innocent. And if anything that he did that was bad, was to help poor people.
Children are the future, and ensuring our future is healthy requires that children are always provided with nutritious foods to grow well and live long. Unhealthy diets high in sugar, salt, and fat consumed by children may make them obese and prone to non-communicable diseases later in life. Healthy foods and beverages not only help them learn better, but also protects them from non-communicable diseases such as some cancers, diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular diseases in their childhood and adult life. So, whether it's at home, in the lunch bag, or at school, let's make healthy foods and beverages for our children the only rule.
Teaching is learn by doing. So students don't learn by you telling them what to do, but they actually are able to use that hands-on approach to learn about what it is that they're doing. So for example, we're teaching about light, and we talk about what is light, so you give them a little bit of a background, you find out what they know as well, and then you are now actually creating something. You're making a model. You're using art, you're using science, you're using technology. So you're able to integrate different disciplines so that students can walk away with the different process skills. In order for them to create, they have to go through a process. They have to think, they have to problem solve. And that is how you get the critical thinking skills and the creativity coming out, these 21st century skills. That is how they're able to actually do it.
What can a little germs do?
Pink eye running belly, even flu. Germs can make them happen to you.
Put germs on our manners with these. Cover your mouth when you cough and sneeze. Always wash your hand with water and soap. Keep dirty hands from your eyes and your nose and your mouth. You don't want to be sick, take care. Practice every day, no germs round here. A message from the Ministry of Health.
When it comes to mealtime, children can be very picky. But nutritionist Nicole France shares one solution that may help.
As soon as children can put solid food into their mouths, introduce them to fruits, vegetables, peas and beans, so that they get accustomed to the taste. These are all healthier choices for children to eat. And then we need to be aware of what's in the food that we are giving the children. So reading food labels, read the packages, look to see how much sugar is in the food, look to see how much sodium is in the food, how much fat is in the food. see if there are any nutrients and anything healthy that the children will get from what you are giving them. So read the food label.
A people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots.
No one remember old Marcus Garvey. No one remember.
A boy of humble beginnings, taking his first steps towards a life decorated and defined by the search for a proud black identity. The journey began on August 17, 1887, in a rural district nestled in the Garden Parish of St. Anne, where the union of a mason and a domestic worker birthed a living legacy of black self-empowerment.
When you hear him describe his mother, Sarah Jane Garvey, she had a different kind of influence on him. I think that he inherited a lot of her sense of compassion.
Marcus also inherited much from his father, Marcus Mosiah Garvey Sr. Together, his parents gave him a strong foundation, starting at 32 Market Street in St. Anne's Bay. The Universal Negro Improvement Association, the Pan-African Movement, the Negro Factories Corporation, the Black Star Liner Shipping Company, all symbols of achievement to which Garvey could lay claim. But his life was more than the public platform familiar to most. Garvey was equal parts Pan-Africanist and father, equal parts orator and husband, scholar and son, national hero and lifetime student. As a young boy, Garvey developed a love of reading, first from his father's private library, and later the more extensive collection of his godfather Alfred Burroughs. An apprenticeship with Burroughs at age 14 provided a platform for literary expression through the printing press. It's an influence that would find expression in several newspaper developments and publications throughout Garvey's life. Even as he trod the path of visionary, philosopher, and scholar, Marcus Garvey was a family man. After a long courtship, he married Amy Ashwood in a private Catholic church ceremony, followed by an elaborate public ceremony and reception at Liberty Hall on Christmas Day, 1919. The union didn't last. But Garvey found love and family life again with his longtime secretary, Amy Jakes. The two married in July 1922 and had two sons, Marcus Jr. and Julius.
You can see letters that they wrote to each other when his sons were in Jamaica and he was in England. He has nicknames for them. He speaks to them the same way a loving father would speak to any child.
From the dirt tracks in a small rural community to a global stage promoting change, the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey was the epitome of ambition.
When you look at his background versus what he was able to achieve in a very, very short time period, you have to recognize that it was ambition that was driving him. But most importantly, he had ambition not just for himself, but for people of his race. He wanted black people to be liberated in every sense of the word, not just physically, but mentally, economically, socially, and so on.
On June 10, 1940, a nation lost a hero, humanity lost a world changer. Marcus Garvey was finally laid to rest in 1964 in Jamaica after 52 short years. The man from St. Anne's Bay had given black people a new way of looking at themselves. He'd told them to embrace their identity, that they could achieve anything.
Up you mighty race! Accomplish what you will!
No one remember old Marcus Garvey. No one remember old Marcus Garvey.
Nutritious food, succulent dishes, superior workmanship, and excellent service. Jamaica is on the go. Let's grow what we eat and eat what we grow. Let's harness the indomitable spirit of our most valued resource, our people. Let's support our local businesses. After all, buying Jamaican means building Jamaica.
The summer holiday for children is their time to rest and have fun. But as parents and guardians, it is our duty to ensure they don't lose sight of the knowledge learned in school. Here are some tips to help keep your little ones entertained while at home. Spend time cooking together. Cooking is a lifelong skill. It doesn't hurt teaching your child how to find their way around the kitchen and prepare simple yet filling meals. But remember, safety first. Have your child read for at least 30 minutes a day. Yes, reading is fundamental, and the earlier they start, the better. But not just any books. Ensure they have educational content or provide life lessons. Engage in meaningful vocabulary-building conversations. While you engage in daily conversations, introduce them to new words. Give them context clues and use these words in sentences. Let this be a fun and learning experience for you both. Try out safe at-home science or art projects. Children are naturally curious, so imagine how fun carrying out science experiments would be for them. Likewise, art projects. Expose them to outdoor activities. Let's bring back the days where we explored the great outdoors and connected with nature. Let's balance fun and learning this summer by following these tips on how to beat the summer slide.
In Roxborough, Manchester is a museum dedicated to telling the story of the life and work of the Right Honourable Norman Washington Manley. You will find it nestled on a hillside at the place of his birth. Once inside, you will be captivated by intriguing information on his years as a soldier, athlete, scholar, statesman, and advocate. At the museum, you can read about how Norman Manley supported the cause of the workers at the time of the labor troubles in 1938. His advocacy took on a more defined role when he rose to lead the newly formed People's National Party (PNP) in 1938 and remained as president until his retirement in 1969. Norman Washington Manley became chief minister after the 1955 election and premier in 1958, the same year Jamaica joined the West Indies Federation. A faithful supporter of the Federation, Manley put the issue to the people, holding a referendum in 1961 to decide if the country should remain in the Federation. The answer was no, and Manley arranged for Jamaica's orderly withdrawal. Manley kept himself busy with the things he was very passionate about, leaving behind an extensive legacy, such as his role in obtaining universal adult suffrage in 1944 and developing a new constitution for independent Jamaica. And so, in 1954, he led efforts to secure executive powers for elected representatives. It was also under Norman Manley's leadership that Jamaica achieved full internal self-government in 1959, a precursor to political independence that would come 3 years later. Manley's dedicated service to Jamaica earned him the Order of National Hero in 1969. Norman Manley died on September 2, 1969.
Persons with disabilities have abilities too, and that our responsibility is to focus on their abilities and to help them to nurture those abilities so they can blossom like a beautiful flower. And agriculture and fisheries presents, in my view, a very real opportunity. Farming is an awesome opportunity, particularly for persons who may not have that ability to express themselves as much, may not have the ability to absorb things as quickly. But remember, it doesn't mean they don't have ability, they have ability.